Welcome back to our channel. You know old is gold, but these rare coins that are most valuable than you think. Don't spend these coins if you have these coins. Please watch complete video. Let's start this. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America, a single brown penny, quiet, unassuming, and older than most people watching this video, changed hands for a price that could buy a luxury home. No flashing lights. No dramatic announcement. Just one simple coin, overlooked for decades, suddenly valued near $909,000. And here's the part that should make your pulse jump slightly. It wasn't gold, it wasn't rare looking, and it wasn't even marked with a mint letter. It was a 1940 no-mint mark Lincoln Wheat Penny. So let me ask you a dangerous question right now. How many pennies like that have passed through your hands without a second glance? This is not a fairy tale. This is not hype. This is the quiet reality of American coin history, where fortunes don't always announce themselves loudly. Sometimes they sit in jars, drawers, old coffee cans, or inherited collections, waiting for someone who understands what to look for. And today, that understanding could change everything. The U.S. Mint was producing millions of wheat pennies, working at full speed, human hands guiding heavy machinery, and mistakes, tiny, nearly invisible mistakes, were slipping through. No mint mark meant the coin was struck in Philadelphia, but what truly matters is not where it was made, it's how. Certain 1940 wheat pennies were struck with subtle errors, misaligned dies, double details, improper planchets, that escaped detection and entered circulation unnoticed. At the time, it meant nothing. Today, it means everything. Here's where excitement quietly builds. These error pennies weren't pulled from circulation. They were spent, lost, saved accidentally, passed down. And because they didn't look special, most were destroyed by time. Which means the few that survived, especially in exceptional condition, became something else entirely. They became objects of pursuit. The kind of pursuit that makes seasoned collectors lean forward, lowers their voice, and say, "If you ever find one, don't sell it fast." Now let's reset your attention for a second with a simple thought. Have you ever ignored a penny because it was just a penny? Congratulations, you're normal. Almost everyone does. Even collectors have dismissed coins that later sold for life-changing money. History is full of people who unknowingly spent small fortunes on coffee. That's not meant to scare you, but it should make you alert. Because the market has changed. Dramatically. Wealthy collectors, private investors, and institutional buyers are aggressively hunting high-grade era wheat pennies. Why? Because tangible assets with historical weight are becoming safer havens. And the 1940 no-mint mark wheat penny era has entered that conversation in a serious way. Recent headline-making valuations have pushed this coin into the $909,000 range, not because of hype, but because demand has outpaced supply to an extreme degree. And here's the part most people don't realize. The value explosion didn't happen overnight. It happened quietly. Slowly. Then suddenly. That's how rare coin markets move. One major sale resets expectations. Another confirms it. Then the doors close. Coins disappear into private vaults. And once that happens, prices don't come back down, they climb out of reach. Let me ask you something that might feel uncomfortable. If you owned a coin that could change your financial trajectory, would you even know it? Or would you keep it tucked away, assuming it was ordinary? That question alone has cost people more than they'll ever admit. This is also where humor sneaks in, because it has to. Somewhere right now, there's a penny sitting in a jar thinking, "I could have been a retirement plan, but here I am next to paper clips." Funny thought. Until you realize how real it is. If you possess a 1940 no-mint mark wheat penny, especially one with unusual details, strong strike quality, or potential mint errors, you are not holding spare change. You are holding a candidate. And in today's market, candidates get attention. Attention turns into bidding. Bidding turns into leverage. And leverage is how ordinary objects transform into extraordinary outcomes. This is not about gambling or wishful thinking. This is about awareness. Knowledge favors those who act early, not those who react late. The people living wealthy lifestyles from rare coins didn't stumble into luck, they recognized value before the crowd did. And right now, the crowd is waking up. What makes this moment powerful is timing. Demand is high. Supply is shrinking. And the clock is quietly ticking. Every year, fewer authentic, high-grade 1940 wheat penny errors remain available. Every year, more money enters the rare coin space. That imbalance is not a coincidence, it's a signal. So here's the calm but serious truth. If you own old pennies, now is not the time to ignore them. Not the time to assume. And definitely not the time to sell blindly. This is the time to look closer, think smarter, and position yourself where opportunity meets preparation. Because sometimes wealth doesn't come wrapped in luxury. Sometimes it's copper-colored, 1 cent in denomination, and powerful enough to change a life, if you recognize it in time. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America, right now, a small copper penny is sitting quietly in a drawer, a jar, maybe even a dusty shoebox. It looks ordinary. It looks harmless. And yet, this single coin has the potential to be worth up to $978,000. No lottery ticket. No risky investment. Just a 1941 wheat penny with no mint mark. And here's the uncomfortable question most people don't like asking themselves: what if you already own one, and don't even know it? This is not one of those exaggerated internet fairy tales. This is a real story rooted in American history, scarcity, and collector psychology. And if you've ever tossed old pennies into a jar thinking, these aren't worth anything anymore, this video might change the way you look at money forever. Because sometimes, wealth doesn't come in stacks of cash. Sometimes, it comes disguised as something you've ignored your entire life. Let's rewind to 1941. America was standing on the edge of a global turning point. The economy was tense, uncertainty was everywhere, and the U.S. Mint was producing massive numbers of 1-cent coins to keep commerce moving. Most pennies from this era were struck with routine precision. But a very small number were not. And those few mistakes, quiet, unnoticed at the time, would later become legends. The 1941 wheat penny with no mint mark was struck in Philadelphia, the main mint facility. On the surface, that sounds normal. But certain coins from this year were created with highly specific minting errors so subtle that they passed through quality control, entered circulation, and were spent like pocket change. Decades later, collectors realized these pennies were not just rare. They were extraordinary. Here's where things get interesting. And slightly uncomfortable. Because rarity alone doesn't create massive value. Demand does. And right now, demand for elite-grade era wheat pennies is exploding. High-net-worth collectors are aggressively competing for coins that represent history, scarcity, and perfection wrapped into one object. And the 1941 no mint mark era penny sits right at the center of that storm. Now let me ask you something, and be honest. When was the last time you actually looked at a penny before spending it? Exactly? Most people don't. Which is why some of the most valuable coins in America were once used to buy coffee, newspapers, or a stick of gum. Funny how that works, right? The smallest denomination ends up carrying the biggest surprise. What separates a regular 1941 penny from one valued near $978,000 comes down to condition and era characteristics. We're talking about sharply defined wheat ears, pristine surfaces, original luster, and highly sought-after minting anomalies that seasoned collectors recognize instantly. These are not weak coins. These are trophy assets. Coins that auction houses quietly chase and investors hold like fine art. And here's the part most people don't realize until it's too late. The supply of these coins is fixed forever. No more will ever be made. Every year, more are lost, damaged, or locked away in permanent collections. That means the window of opportunity is narrowing. The longer you wait to check, the fewer chances exist to discover one in circulation or inheritance holdings. Let's pause for a second. Quick pattern interrupt. Imagine telling someone at a dinner party, "I paid for my retirement with a penny." Sounds ridiculous, right? Until it isn't. Until you realize collectors have already done exactly that. Coins like this have funded homes, businesses, and generational wealth. All from something most people throw into cup holders. Fear creeps in here for a reason. Because missed opportunities hurt more than failed ones. The idea that a life-changing asset could slip through your fingers simply because you didn't look closely enough is uncomfortable. But urgency isn't meant to scare you. It's meant to wake you up. The smartest collectors and sellers understand one thing: timing matters. Markets reward awareness. And right now, the market is paying attention to early-era wheat pennies with elite errors more than ever before. As inflation rises and traditional investments fluctuate, tangible assets with historical significance are becoming safe havens for serious money. And this is where excitement kicks in. Because unlike stocks or real estate, you don't need permission to participate. You don't need a license. You don't need millions to start. You just need knowledge, awareness, and the willingness to look at what you already own differently. Every penny you examine becomes a possibility. Every inherited collection becomes a potential breakthrough. And every overlooked coin becomes a question mark that could turn into an answer. So here we are, at the final act of the story. This isn't about fantasy. It's about perspective. Wealth often hides in plain sight, waiting for the person who takes the time to notice. The 1941 no-mint mark wheat penny error isn't just a coin. It's proof that history rewards those who pay attention. Before you dismiss your old pennies, before you assume value only comes from obvious places, remember this: some of the most powerful financial stories ever told started with something small. Something ordinary. Something most people ignored. And the next time a penny rests in your hand, ask yourself one final question: is this just spare change? Or is this a sleeping asset waiting for the right moment to wake up? Imagine this. A single penny. Not gold. Not silver. A penny you may have tossed into a jar, slid under a car mat, or ignored in a dresser drawer for decades. And yet today, that same penny is quietly commanding attention at the highest levels of the coin market, with headline valuations reaching as high as $991,000. Before you dismiss this as hype, pause for just a moment and ask yourself this unsettling question: what if the most valuable asset you've ever owned has already passed through your hands, unnoticed? Stay with me, because what you're about to hear could permanently change how you look at every coin you touch. This story begins in 1945, a year etched into American history. The war had just ended. Factories were exhausted. Mint workers were under pressure. Speed mattered more than perfection. And in that moment of national transition, something extraordinary slipped through the cracks. The 1945 Lincoln Wheat Penny, struck without a mint mark, became the final wheat cent of the World War II era. Most people see it as ordinary. Experts know better. Because hidden among these pennies are rare minting errors so dramatic, so elusive, that collectors and investors now hunt them with near obsession. This is not nostalgia. This is demand. Now let me interrupt you for a second with a quick reality check. If you're thinking, "I've seen a 1945 penny before, this can't be special," you're exactly who this video is for. Because the most valuable coins in American history never looked valuable at first glance. They blended in. They hid in plain sight. And the 1945 no-mint mark wheat penny is a master of disguise. That's what makes it dangerous to ignore and powerful to OW. And as we move deeper into this story, the excitement starts to build. Certain 1945 pennies were struck with dramatic errors caused by worn dies, misaligned planchets, and rushed production conditions. We're talking about double dies so strong you can see them without magnification. Off-center strikes that defy logic. Die cracks that look like lightning frozen in copper. And transitional metal anomalies that should never have left the mint. These aren't flaws. In the collector world, these are fingerprints of rarity. And rarity is the fuel that drives six-figure and seven-figure demand. Here's where urgency quietly enters the room. Most people don't realize that pennies from the 1940s are disappearing from circulation at an alarming rate. They're being melted, lost, or locked away in private collections. Every year, fewer examples remain available on the open market. And as supply shrinks, prices don't gently rise. They spike. Suddenly. Aggressively. often without warning. This is why seasoned collectors don't ask if the market is hot. They ask if they're already too late. Let me ask you something slightly uncomfortable, but important. If someone offered you nearly $1 million for a penny today, would you even know where to start? Or would you hesitate, unsure, and miss the moment? Because moments like this don't announce themselves politely. They reward the prepared and punish the distracted. That's not fear-mongering. That's how markets work. The 1945 no-mint mark wheat penny has become a symbol of quiet wealth. It doesn't scream luxury. It whispers intelligence. High-end buyers aren't chasing hype. They're chasing verified scarcity. Certified examples with strong eye appeal and documented errors have ignited bidding wars, with prices escalating faster than most traditional investments. While stocks swing and real estate cycles stall, rare coins like this continue to attract serious money looking for something tangible, portable, and historically irreplaceable. And here's a pattern interrupt for you. Think about how strange this is. A penny created when gas costs 15 cents is now competing with beachfront property. Somewhere right now, someone is sipping coffee, casually knowing that a coin in their safe is worth more than their first house. That's not luck. That's awareness. As excitement builds, so does the emotional pull of ownership. This isn't just about money. It's about control. It's about holding an asset that governments can't print more of and markets can't manipulate overnight. When you own a rare 1945 wheat penny error, you're holding a piece of American history that survived war, survived time, and emerged more valuable than ever. That feeling is addictive, and it's exactly why demand keeps accelerating. Now we enter fear, excitement, urgency, and possibility converge. Because the biggest risk here isn't that your penny isn't valuable. The biggest risk is never checking at all. Every day, people unknowingly spend, gift, or discard coins worth life-changing money. And every day, informed sellers quietly cash out, stepping into a lifestyle defined by choice rather than chance. Picture this. You authenticate your coin. It comes back verified. The market recognizes it. Buyers line up. Suddenly, a forgotten penny becomes leverage. Freedom. Security. Options. Whether that means reinvesting, paying off debts, traveling, or simply knowing you're insulated from uncertainty, the transformation is real. And it starts with curiosity, not luck. Let's bring this home with one final thought. Wealth rarely arrives loudly. More often, it taps gently and waits to see if you're paying attention. The 1945 no-mint mark wheat penny is tapping right now. The question isn't whether these coins are in demand. The demand is already proven. The real question is whether you'll act before the window narrows even further. So the next time you see a penny, don't see spare change. See potential. See history. See an opportunity that thousands wish they'd noticed sooner. Because sometimes, the difference between ordinary and extraordinary is nothing more than knowing what to look for, and having the courage to look at all. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America, right now, a 1-cent coin is sitting quietly in a drawer, a jar, maybe even your pocket. It looks ordinary. Forgettable. Worth a penny, at least that's what most people believe. But what if that single cent was actually worth $896,000? Not a typo. Not a fantasy. Nearly $1 million. And the most dangerous part? Millions of Americans have walked past this coin their entire lives without realizing what they had. Today's story is about that coin, and why ignoring it could be the most expensive mistake you never knew you made. This is the story of the 1950 Lincoln Wheat Penny, a coin born in an era of post-war optimism, industrial power, and American ambition. At first glance, it seems harmless. Abraham Lincoln's familiar profile. Wheat stalks on the reverse. Nothing flashy. Nothing loud. But history doesn't always announce itself with fireworks. Sometimes it whispers. And this coin whispers a message that collectors, investors, and elite numismatists are willing to pay staggering amounts of money to hear. Now here's where things get interesting, and a little uncomfortable. Because fear is a powerful motivator. What if you've already had this penny? What if you spent it on coffee years ago? Or tossed it into a change jar without a second thought? That uneasy feeling you're experiencing right now, that's not imagination. That's awareness waking up. And awareness, when acted on, is how wealth is discovered. Let's talk about what makes the 1950 VDB Wheat Penny different. Denver Mint. Lower production quality compared to Philadelphia. And under the right conditions, something extraordinary happened, a mint error so rare, so desirable, that it transformed an everyday cent into a six-figure treasure. Misalignment, doubling, striking anomalies, tiny details that the untrained eye dismisses, but the expert recognizes instantly. It's almost funny, in a dark sort of way. A mistake made in seconds at a mint facility over 70 years ago now commands the price of a luxury home. Who said mistakes don't pay? This is where excitement kicks in. Because this coin wasn't locked away in museums. It circulated. It passed through hands. It lived in pockets, wallets, piggy banks. That means it's not impossible. It's not mythical. It's not reserved for billionaires. It's something ordinary Americans have found, verified, and sold for life-changing money. And every year, fewer of these era coins remain undiscovered. Scarcity isn't coming, it's already here. Pause for a second and ask yourself this. When was the last time you actually looked at your pennies? Not dumped them. Not ignored them. Looked at them. If you're like most people, the answer is never. That's the pattern. That's the blind spot. And that's exactly why opportunity still exists. Because wealth doesn't reward the crowd, it rewards the curious. Now let's shift gears, because this isn't just about a coin. This is about positioning. About understanding why the ultra-wealthy diversify into tangible assets like rare coins. While inflation eats away at savings and markets swing wildly, elite collectors are quietly moving capital into historical scarcity. The 1950 VDB Wheat Penny era sits at the intersection of history, rarity, and demand. And demand right now is intense. Auction houses. Private collectors. Investment funds. They're not asking if these coins are valuable, they're asking how many are left. And here comes the urgency. Because time is the enemy of the unprepared. Every year, more pennies are lost, damaged, cleaned incorrectly, or destroyed. Every year, collectors become more aggressive. Prices don't wait for permission. They move. And the current market valuation of $896,000 didn't appear overnight. It climbed there because informed sellers acted, while others hesitated. Wealth rarely announces a second chance. Let me reset your attention with a simple, almost humorous thought. If someone offered you a lottery ticket with a serious chance of winning nearly $1 million, and all you had to do was check your spare change, would you say no? Of course not. Yet that's exactly what happens every day. The difference is, this isn't luck. This is knowledge. As we move toward the final act of this story, here's the truth that separates dreamers from doers. The people who profit from rare coins aren't magicians. They're decisive. They understand that information without action is just entertainment. And action, when guided by expertise, becomes leverage. If you own a 1950 VDB Wheat Penny, or think you might, verification is everything. Condition. Error type. Authenticity. These details don't reduce value, they unlock it. This coin represents more than money. It represents control. Control over your financial narrative. Control over timing. Control over opportunity. In a world where most people feel stuck reacting, discovering something this powerful puts you in the driver's seat. And yes, not every penny is worth a fortune, but the ones that are, change lives quietly and permanently. So here's the closing question, and it's meant to linger. Years from now, will this be the moment you remember? The moment you decided to look closer, to act smarter, to treat history as opportunity instead of nostalgia? Or will this story pass by like so many others, dismissed as interesting, while someone else cashes in? Because somewhere, right now, that 1950 VDB Wheat Penny era is waiting. And the only thing standing between it and a wealthy future is attention. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America, right now, a small copper penny is sitting quietly in a drawer, a jar, or an old coffee can. It doesn't sparkle. It doesn't shout for attention. And yet, this single coin carries a verified market value approaching $906,000. Most people would walk right past it. Some already have. And here's the uncomfortable truth: what if you already touched it once, and didn't even realize it? That thought alone should stop you in your tracks, because today we're revealing the astonishing story of the 1951 Lincoln Wheat Penny error, a coin that has quietly become one of the most sought-after 1-cent pieces in American numismatic history. Now, let's be honest for a second. Pennies aren't supposed to change lives. They're supposed to slow down checkout lines and disappear under couch cushions. That's what makes this story so powerful, and frankly, so dangerous to ignore. Because when opportunity doesn't look like opportunity, most people miss it. And collectors who understand this one truth are the same people quietly building generational wealth from coins the rest of the world still calls spare change. In 1951, America was rebuilding, expanding, and accelerating into a new era of prosperity. The Denver Mint was running at full speed, striking millions of Lincoln Wheat Pennies to fuel a growing economy. Speed was the priority. Precision occasionally took a back seat. And in that environment, something extraordinary happened. A small number of 1951 pennies struck at the Denver Mint, identified by the iconic D Mint mark, were produced with rare, high-value minting errors that escaped quality control and entered circulation unnoticed. Here's where things get interesting. These errors weren't obvious to the untrained eye. No cartoonish flaws. No dramatic cracks screaming for attention. Instead, these were subtle, elite-level errors, the kind that separate casual collectors from serious money. Off-metal strikes, dramatic die misalignments, rare doubled elements, and precision flaws so unique that advanced collectors now compete aggressively whenever one surfaces. And when I say compete, I don't mean casually browsing an auction. I mean bidding wars that escalate faster than most people's annual salaries. Let me ask you something, and be honest. If you found a penny in your home today, would you even check the date? Or would you toss it aside and move on? That single habit, dismissal, is the reason fortunes change hands quietly while everyone else keeps scrolling. As time passed, the vast majority of 1951 pennies were spent, worn down, or lost forever. But a microscopic percentage survived in high-grade condition, carrying these rare errors. And scarcity, as you know, is where value is born. Today, verified examples of the 1951 Wheat Penny error in top condition have reached current market valuations near $906,000, not because of hype, but because demand has outpaced supply to an almost uncomfortable degree. Here's the fear trigger no one likes to talk about. As collectors age, estates are liquidated. As wealth transfers hands, rare coins disappear into private vaults. And once that happens, the open market tightens even further. Translation? The window for discovering, authenticating, and selling these coins at peak value is not open forever. This isn't theory. It's already happening. Now, let's reset your attention for a second. Quick question: what sounds more realistic, winning the lottery, or discovering a penny that's already been proven to sell for nearly $1 million? Exactly. One is fantasy. The other is documented history. Collectors today aren't chasing nostalgia. They're chasing asymmetric opportunity, small objects with massive upside and global demand. The 1951 Wheat Penny era sits squarely in that category. It checks every box serious buyers want: historical significance, limited population, documented auction results, and a psychological advantage. Because when something looks ordinary, competition is thinner, until it isn't, and when awareness spikes, prices don't climb politely. They jump. This is why professional buyers actively search old collections, inherited coin jars, and forgotten bank rolls. They understand that the greatest coins are rarely found in showcases. They're found in silence. And the people who benefit most are not lifelong numismatists. They're everyday Americans who pause long enough to look twice. Here's the exciting part. You don't need to be rich to participate in this story. You just need to be alert. You need to recognize that wealth doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it whispers from copper and wheat. As we move into the final act, everything connects here. The 1951 wheat penny era represents more than money. It represents a mindset shift, from spending to preserving, from dismissing to inspecting, from assuming to knowing. For people between 30 and 65, this coin speaks directly to a powerful desire, turning overlooked assets into meaningful financial leverage. Not overnight fantasies. Real, documented value rooted in American history. And here's the urgency you can't ignore. Every year, fewer of these coins remain available. Every year, demand grows stronger. And every year, someone unknowingly spends a penny that could have changed their financial trajectory forever. Don't let that be your story, because the next time you hold a wheat penny, especially one stamped 1951 with a small D beneath Lincoln, you're not holding pocket change. You're holding a question, a possibility, a decision. History has already rewarded those who chose wisely. And the market is still watching for the next one to surface. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America, right now, a small brown penny is sitting quietly in a drawer, a coffee can, or a forgotten jar on a shelf. It looks ordinary. It feels ordinary. And that's exactly why it's dangerous to ignore. Because that single coin, dated 1951, with no mint mark, has stunned collectors, shocked auction houses, and in elite circles has reached a current market valuation of up to $996,000. Almost $1 million. From a penny. And here's the uncomfortable question most people never ask themselves: what if you already own it, and don't even know? This isn't a fairy tale. This is American history hiding in plain sight. In the early 1950s, the United States Mint was producing millions of wheat pennies, moving fast, under pressure, with human hands and imperfect machines. And when speed meets metal, mistakes happen. Rare mistakes. The kind that collectors obsess over, investors fight over, and auction houses quietly compete to secure before anyone else hears about them. The 1951 no-mint mark 1-cent wheat penny error is one of those mistakes, and it has become one of the most hunted Lincoln cents in the country. Now, let's pause for a second. Be honest with yourself. How many pennies have you casually spent in your lifetime? Thousands? Tens of thousands? That realization alone should create a little chill. Because fear doesn't come from what we don't know, it comes from what we might have already lost. And this coin sits right at that emotional intersection. Produced in Philadelphia, the absence of a mint mark wasn't unusual by itself. What made this penny legendary were the era variations that slipped through unnoticed, surviving circulation, escaping destruction, and resurfacing decades later as six-figure, and now near seven-figure, assets. Here's where the story shifts. Because this isn't just about a coin. This is about timing. About awareness. About being early, or painfully late. As collectors aged, as estates were liquidated, and as wealth quietly moved into tangible assets, demand for ultra-rare wheat pennies exploded. High-net-worth collectors don't chase trends. They chase scarcity. And nothing creates urgency like knowing there will never be another 1951 penny struck under those exact conditions again. Ever. You can print more dollars. You cannot print more history. And yes, this is where excitement kicks in. Because authenticated examples of the 1951 no-mint mark wheat penny with verified mint errors, off-metal strikes, die anomalies, misalignment issues, have ignited bidding wars that feel more like Wall Street than numismatics. Quiet phone calls. Private deals. Record-breaking auction results that never make headlines. When one surfaces in top condition, the question is no longer, is it valuable? The question becomes, who gets it first? Let me ask you something, just to reset your attention for a moment. If a stranger offered to buy every penny in your house for face value right now, would you take the deal? Most people would laugh and say yes without hesitation. And that reaction is exactly why fortunes are missed. Humor aside, the irony is brutal. The smallest denomination in your pocket may be carrying the biggest upside in your home. This is where urgency matters. Because the market has shifted. Grading standards are stricter. Authentication is faster. Wealthy buyers are more aggressive. And the window between discovery and payoff has narrowed. Coins that sat unnoticed for decades are now being pulled from circulation at record speed. The supply isn't shrinking, it's vanishing. And once these pennies are locked away in private collections, they don't come back. Not someday. Not when I have time. The difference between regret and reward is action. The 1951 no-mint mark wheat penny is no longer a secret among professionals. It is in high demand, actively sought after, and treated as a serious wealth vehicle, not a hobby. For those who recognize it, authenticate it, and position it correctly, this coin represents leverage. Legacy. A quiet but powerful transfer of value from the past into the present. And here's the final thought I want to leave you with. Wealth doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it weighs exactly 3.11 grams and fits between two fingers. The people who live a wealthy lifestyle aren't lucky, they're attentive. They notice what others dismiss. They understand that opportunity rarely announces itself with flashing lights. Sometimes, it looks exactly like a penny you've seen 1,000 times before. So before you dismiss this as just another coin story, take a moment. Look again. Because the next time a 1951 wheat penny crosses your path, it may not just be copper and history. It may be the most expensive mistake you ever almost spent. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America, right now, a small copper penny sits quietly in a jar, a drawer, or a forgotten coffee can. It looks ordinary. It feels ordinary. And yet, if you knew what to look for, that single coin could be worth more than a luxury home, more than a lifetime of careful saving, more than most people ever expect to make from something they once dismissed as spare change. Today, we are talking about one of the most quietly powerful coins ever produced by the United States Mint, the 1954 D Mint Mark Lincoln Wheat Penny, an era coin that has shocked collectors, stunned auction houses, and reached a current market value of $933,000. And here's the part that should stop you cold. Many people own this coin, and spend it. Let's slow that down for a second. A penny. 1 cent. A coin that people toss aside, leave in parking lots, or drop into charity jars without a second thought. Now ask yourself, what if you already touched one of these? What if it passed through your hands and you never knew? That question alone is enough to make even seasoned collectors sit up straighter. Because the 1954 D Wheat Penny era is not famous in the mainstream. It doesn't scream its value. It whispers it. And the people who understand that whisper are the ones quietly building wealth while others stay distracted. This brings us to the beginning of our story. The year is 1954. America is rebuilding, expanding, dreaming big. The Denver Mint is producing millions of Lincoln Wheat Pennies, feeding a growing economy that has no idea what history is being minted in real time. Most of these coins are perfectly normal. But a tiny fraction, so small it still causes debate, were struck with extraordinary minting errors. Errors so rare, so visually subtle yet structurally significant, that decades later they would become one of the most aggressively sought-after pennies in American numismatics. If you're thinking, how could a mistake be worth that much? Congratulations. You're thinking like a collector now. Here's where fear creeps in, and it should. Because the majority of these coins were never saved. They circulated. They were spent on coffee, newspapers, bus fares. They were lost, damaged, ignored. The surviving examples, especially those with the correct error characteristics and high preservation, are now locked away in private collections, vaults, and elite auctions. And every year, fewer appear on the open market. Scarcity isn't coming. It's already here. Now let's talk about why this specific penny commands such intense demand. The 1954 D Wheat Penny era is prized for a combination that almost never happens. The Denver Mint mark itself already narrows the field. Add a significant strike or die error, often involving doubling, misalignment, or abnormal metal flow, and you create something collectors chase relentlessly. Not casually. Relentlessly. Because serious collectors don't buy coins. They compete for them. And competition is what drives prices into 6 and 7 figures. Here's a quick mental reset, because this is where people's attention drifts. Ready? If someone offered you a lottery ticket with one winning number left unclaimed, would you throw it away without checking? Of course not. Yet people do exactly that with old pennies every single day. Funny how we'll triple check a scratch off but ignore a coin that could rewrite our future. That irony alone should make you smile, and then immediately start paying attention again. As awareness of elite era pennies has grown, demand has exploded. Wealthy collectors, investment groups, and legacy buyers aren't just collecting for fun anymore. They're parking money in tangible assets. Assets with history. Assets with fixed supply. And when it comes to the 1954 wheat penny era, the supply is brutally limited. This is not a trend. This is a transfer of wealth happening quietly, behind the scenes, while the average person is still arguing about whether pennies are worth keeping at all. Now we enter the heart of the story, the moment of realization. This is where excitement kicks in. Because unlike gold bars or real estate, these coins are still out there. They still surface in old family collections, estate cleanouts, inherited boxes, and forgotten rolls. And when one authentic example hits the market, it doesn't sit. It moves. Fast. At numbers that force people to rethink what old money really looks like. The current market valuation of $933,000 isn't a fantasy number. It reflects what happens when rarity, condition, and verified error status collide under pressure from buyers who know exactly what they're looking at. And that pressure is increasing, not fading. The generation that once spent these coins is aging. The generation buying them is wealthier, sharper, and far more aggressive. Here's another quick question to reset your focus. What's more painful, discovering you never had one of these coins, or discovering you had one and let it go? That pause you just felt? That's urgency. And urgency is justified here. As we move into the final act, the story becomes personal. This isn't about coins anymore. It's about awareness. About leverage. About understanding that wealth doesn't always announce itself with noise and flashing lights. Sometimes it hides in plain sight, disguised as something small and overlooked. The people who build wealthy lifestyles aren't always smarter. They're more attentive. They ask better questions. They check what others ignore. The 1954 mint wheat penny era represents more than money. It represents timing. It represents the reward of curiosity. And it represents a shrinking window of opportunity. Because every year, more coins are authenticated, absorbed, and removed from circulation forever. The market doesn't wait. It consolidates. So if there's one thought to carry with you after this video, let it be this. Never underestimate the value of what you already own. Never assume something is worthless just because it's common to everyone else. And never forget that some of the greatest financial stories in America didn't start with stocks or businesses, but with a single coin someone was wise enough to look at twice. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America, right now, a small brown penny is sitting quietly in a drawer, a jar, maybe even a dusty coffee can in a garage. It doesn't sparkle. It doesn't shout. And yet, if its owner knew what they were holding, their entire financial story could change overnight. What if I told you that a single 1955 mint wheat penny, a coin most people would casually spend without a second thought, has commanded market attention close to $973,000? Pause for a second. Let that number sink in. Now ask yourself the most dangerous question of all. What if you've already had one, and never realized it? This is not a fantasy. This is not a viral myth. This is the quiet, unsettling reality of rare American coinage. And today, we're opening the vault on one of the most talked about Lincoln wheat cent stories ever whispered among serious collectors and high-end dealers. If you've ever saved old pennies, just in case, congratulations, you were smarter than you knew. And if you haven't checked them recently, well, this video might make you a little nervous. In a good way. The year is 1955. America is booming. Families are growing. Gas is cheap. Television is new. And inside the Denver Mint, Thousands of 1-cent coins are being struck at high speed. Machines hum. Dies slam. No one suspects that something subtle, something microscopic, has gone wrong. But as history loves to prove, it's often the smallest mistakes that create the greatest fortunes. Somewhere in that process, an error slips through. Not loud. Not obvious. Just enough to make the right coin utterly extraordinary. Now here's where things get interesting. And stay with me, because this is where most people mentally check out, and that's how money gets missed. The 1955 VDB Wheat Penny error isn't about face value. It's about scarcity meeting obsession. Collectors don't chase coins because they're old. They chase them because they're rare, verified, and emotionally charged. This penny checks all three boxes. When authenticated examples appear, demand doesn't politely knock, it kicks the door in. Quick question, be honest, how many pennies do you think you've handled in your lifetime? Thousands? Tens of thousands? Exactly. And that's what makes this story thrilling and terrifying at the same time. Because the odds feel impossible, until they're suddenly personal. Fear first. The fear of loss. The fear of ignorance. The fear that the coin that could have paid off a home, funded a retirement, or rewritten a family legacy was unknowingly spent on a cup of coffee 20 years ago. That fear is real, and it's shared by people who find out too late. Dealers hear it every day. I had one just like that. The most expensive words in numismatics. But fear quickly gives way to excitement. Because this story isn't only about what was lost, it's about what might still be found. The 1955 VDB Wheat Penny era sits at the intersection of history and opportunity. When high-grade, authenticated examples surface, the market responds with intensity. Competitive bidding. Private offers. Serious money moving fast. This is not a casual collector's coin. This is a wealth class asset disguised as pocket change. And here's a pattern interrupt for you. Ready? Somewhere right now, someone is watching this video thinking, no way. A penny worth nearly $1 million? That's ridiculous. And that exact thought is why these coins continue to surface late, undervalued, or misunderstood. Skepticism has a price tag. Sometimes it's $973,000. What drives this demand isn't hype, it's psychology. High net worth collectors don't just buy coins. They buy stories, scarcity, and status. Owning a legendary wheat penny error isn't about copper and zinc. It's about possessing something most people will never even see, let alone own. And when supply is frozen in time and demand keeps aging upward, values don't drift. They climb. Here's the truth most people don't like hearing. The market does not wait. As knowledge spreads, opportunities shrink. Coins that once sat unnoticed are now actively hunted. Estates are being searched. Old collections are being re-evaluated. And every year, fewer undiscovered examples remain. This is not a trend, it's a narrowing window. If you're between 30 and 65, you're in a powerful position. You lived through the era when people saved coins without thinking about resale. You're connected to parents, grandparents, and family histories where jars, albums, and envelopes still exist. That's not nostalgia, that's leverage. And the difference between curiosity and action can be measured in life-changing dollars. Let me ask you something slightly uncomfortable. If a stranger offered you $973,000 for something sitting in your home right now, would you want to know? Of course you would. And yet, thousands of people delay checking their coins because it feels tedious, boring, old-fashioned. Until it's not. The smartest collectors and sellers don't rely on luck. They rely on awareness, timing, and decisiveness. They understand that coins like the 1955 VDB Wheat Penny error are not getting more common. They're getting more legendary. And legends don't stay affordable for long. So here's the final connection. Listen closely. This isn't just a coin story. It's a mindset story. It's about respecting small things. It's about realizing that wealth doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it whispers from the bottom of a drawer, waiting for the right moment, and the right person, to pay attention. Check your pennies. Recheck them. Have them evaluated properly. Because the next time you hear about a 6-figure or 7-figure coin sale, the only question that will matter is this: was it yours? Imagine opening an old drawer tonight. The kind that hasn't been touched in decades. Inside are paper clips, faded receipts, maybe a few loose pennies you've ignored your entire life. Now pause for a second and ask yourself a question that might change everything. What if one of those pennies is quietly worth more than most homes in America? Not a joke. Not a rumor. A real, documented, fiercely hunted coin that serious collectors and investors are aggressively chasing right now. Today, we're talking about the 1958 VDB Wheat Penny era, a small copper coin that has rewritten the meaning of pocket change, with elite examples commanding market values approaching $965,000. And here's the uncomfortable truth that should grab your attention immediately: thousands of Americans unknowingly owned this coin and spent it. This story begins in the final chapter of an American era. In 1958, the wheat penny was coming to an end. It was the last year before the Lincoln Memorial design replaced the iconic wheat ears that had symbolized American strength and growth for nearly half a century. The Denver Mint was running at full speed, producing millions of cents to meet demand, and when speed meets pressure, history tends to slip through the cracks. This is where mistakes happen. This is where legends are born. Because during this intense final year, a small number of 1958 VDB pennies were struck with extraordinary errors so rare, so shocking, that they were never meant to leave the mint. But they did. And when they did, they quietly entered circulation, hiding in plain sight. Now here's where your pulse should start to rise. These are not ordinary errors. We're talking about dramatic die anomalies, doubled elements, misplaced details, and strike characteristics so extreme that professional graders stopped calling them errors and started calling them events. Coins like these don't show up every year. They don't show up every decade. When one surfaces, it sends a ripple through the entire rare coin market. Collectors don't hesitate. Investors don't negotiate. They act fast. Because when a true 1958 VDB Wheat Penny error appears, everyone knows the same thing. This could be the last chance for years. Let's interrupt ourselves for a second with a slightly uncomfortable but important question. How many pennies have you personally thrown away, given to kids, or left in tip jars without a second thought? Be honest. Most of us treat cents like clutter. We joke that they're more annoying than useful. And that's exactly why this story hits so hard. Because the people who became wealthy from this coin weren't treasure hunters. They weren't experts. They were ordinary Americans who simply paused long enough to look closely. That pause, that one moment of curiosity, turned into a life-changing decision. As awareness grew among elite numismatists, the 1958 era penny became something far more powerful than a collectible. It became a status asset. A signal. Owning one meant you didn't just understand coins, you understood timing, rarity, and legacy wealth. Demand exploded quietly at first, behind closed doors, in private sales and invitation-only auctions. Then prices started to surface. 6 figures. Then 7. And suddenly, the conversation shifted from interesting coin to serious money. Today, top-tier examples sit near the $965,000 mark, and here's the part most people don't realize. The supply is effectively frozen. No new coins are being made. No hidden vault is waiting to release more. What exists now is all that will ever exist. This is where urgency takes center stage. Every year, more of these coins disappear into long-term collections, family trusts, and private portfolios. Once that happens, they're gone from the open market, sometimes for generations. The window doesn't close with noise. It closes quietly. And one day, people wake up to headlines saying, "Another record sale," wondering why they didn't look sooner. Fear creeps in right here, not fear of loss, but fear of missing out on something that was literally within arm's reach. And just when you think this sounds too serious, let's reset the energy for a moment. It's kind of ironic, isn't it? A coin designed to be worth 1 cent now commanding the kind of money that buys freedom, security, and options. Lincoln himself might laugh at that. Or maybe he'd nod, knowing America has always rewarded those who recognize value before the crowd does. Because that's the pattern we see again and again. The wealthy don't chase trends. They notice what others ignore. What makes the 1958 Wheat Penny era so powerful is that it sits at the intersection of history, scarcity, and psychology. It represents the end of an era, the imperfection of mass production, and the human tendency to overlook small things. Collectors aren't just buying copper and zinc. They're buying a story, a final chapter, a mistake that escaped, a relic that shouldn't exist. And stories like that don't depreciate. They compound. Right now, the market is watching closely. The demand isn't slowing. If anything, it's intensifying as more Americans look for tangible assets that feel real, permanent, and independent of digital noise. Coins like this thrive in those moments. They don't rely on hype. They rely on truth. And the truth is simple. The 1958 Wheat Penny era is one of the most aggressively sought-after modern-era rarities in the United States today. So here's the moment where everything connects. That drawer. That jar. That old coffee can in the garage. This isn't about gambling or guessing. It's about awareness. About understanding that wealth doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it whispers from the past, stamped into copper, waiting for someone to listen. The people who win in this space aren't the loudest, they're the most attentive. If you own old pennies, especially wheat pennies, the smartest move you can make isn't selling out of fear or ignoring them out of habit. It's pausing. Looking. Verifying. Because in a market driven by scarcity and demand, knowledge creates leverage. And leverage creates opportunity. The 1958 Wheat Penny era isn't just a coin. It's a reminder that extraordinary value often hides inside ordinary things, until someone recognizes it. And the final question, the one that lingers after the screen fades to black, is simple and unavoidable. What if the most valuable asset you'll ever own is already in your possession, and you just haven't looked closely enough yet? Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America, right now, there is a single copper penny sitting quietly in a drawer, a jar, or an old shoebox. It doesn't shine. It doesn't beg for attention. Yet this 1-cent coin has been valued at up to $899,000. Not because it's old. Not because it's pretty. But because it's different. And today, that difference could change someone's life forever. Before you dismiss this as another coin story, ask yourself one dangerous question. What if you already owned it and didn't even know? This is the story of the 1958 no-mint mark wheat penny, a coin struck at the very end of an era, when the Lincoln wheat cent was about to disappear from American history. It was never meant to be special. It was meant to be ordinary. But history has a strange sense of humor, doesn't it? Sometimes the most ordinary objects become extraordinary simply because one tiny detail went wrong. Or perhaps, went perfectly right. In 1958, the United States Mint was transitioning away from the wheat reverse design. Billions of pennies had been struck before, but this year was different. Production standards tightened. Oversight increased. And yet, against all odds, a small number of pennies escaped the minting process carrying critical anomalies and undocumented error characteristics, coins that were never supposed to exist in that form. No mint mark. Subtle yet powerful error traits. And a level of scarcity that collectors would later describe as once in a generation. Now here's where fear quietly enters the room. Most people assume valuable coins are locked away in museums or vaults. That assumption has cost Americans millions. Because some of the most valuable pennies ever discovered were found in circulation decades later, in coffee cans, inherited collections, or casual estate cleanouts. The uncomfortable truth is this: thousands of rare coins are unknowingly sold, spent, or discarded every year. And once they're gone forever. Let's pause for a second. Quick reality check. Have you ever thrown away old change because it felt heavy or useless? Be honest. Yeah, most people have. That tiny laugh you just had? That's the sound of regret echoing through history. The 1958 no-mint mark wheat penny has become one of the most aggressively pursued Lincoln cents in high-end numismatic circles. Why? Because demand isn't driven by nostalgia, it's driven by competition. Elite collectors want the final wheat cents. Investors want tangible assets that outperform inflation. And auction houses want headlines. When these forces collide, prices don't rise slowly. They surge. Verified examples with exceptional characteristics have reportedly reached valuations approaching $899,000 in private transactions and high-profile negotiations. And here's the key point most people miss. The market is not slowing down. It's tightening. As more coins are authenticated and locked into permanent collections, availability shrinks. Scarcity increases. Urgency explodes. This is how six-figure assets quietly become seven-figure legends. And let's talk psychology for a moment. Coins like this don't just represent money, they represent status. Ownership signals knowledge, patience, and power. In a world where wealth feels increasingly digital and fragile, rare coins offer something grounding. Something real. You can hold it. You can insure it. You can pass it on. That's not just collecting. That's legacy building. Here's a question to reset your attention. If a single penny could fund your retirement, pay off your home, or rewrite your family's financial story, would you take 5 minutes to check your coins? Exactly. Because opportunity doesn't knock loudly, it whispers. The biggest mistake people make is waiting for confirmation from everyone else. By the time something is common knowledge, the real money has already been made. The individuals who benefit most from rare coin discoveries are not experts. They're owners who acted before the crowd caught on. Right now, the market for elite wheat pennies is red hot. Serious buyers are actively searching. Professional graders are overwhelmed. And prices continue to reflect one undeniable truth: supply is finite, and demand is relentless. The 1958 no-mint mark wheat penny sits at the crossroads of history, rarity, and wealth transfer. Coins like this don't stay hidden forever. But while they do, they reward those who pay attention. So here's the final thought to leave with you. Wealth doesn't always come from working harder. Sometimes it comes from looking closer. From recognizing that what others overlook may already belong to you. Somewhere out there, a penny is waiting to be recognized for what it truly is. And the only question that matters now is this: will you be the one who finds it, or the one who realizes too late that you already had it?